Broadcasting to you on WNN 1470 AM and TrentoVision.tv from the world's leading think tank laboratory, buried deep in an undisclosed building in hostile territory where evil and corruption is exposed. You're about to enter the Tom Trento Show.
All hands man your battle station.
Tom Trento heads United West, a group that says it defends Western civilization against the onslaught of Islam.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show today. It's kind of dark there. That's strange. Oh, here we go. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. Tom Trento here. Were you doing that on purpose, Mark?
No. Little problem with the TriCaster.
Is there a reason Mickey Mouse is hosting the show today?
Welcome to the show, Tom Trento, your host on WNN 1470.
Mark, can you loosen his underwear?
Yeah. Hold on, that's right.
What's the matter?
He had a little. Step in his kitty. I'm on a health kick,
and yesterday was my annual. How do we say this on the air? My annual
digital checkup.
Digital checkup. And they said it would take about a day to straighten out. Okay. I guess you got to do that every year. Have that digital examination.
Trento at our age every year.
But at your age, Smucky, it's every 6 months.
Every 6 months. But yes, one of my resolutions is to stay healthy so that the jihadis can have more and more of us. And indeed, that's my doctor calling, saying,
Trento, you forgot something here.
Your voice should be coming back any time now, Tom, he's probably saying. But, it's one of those exams, men. You got to do it. You got to man up and do it. And not the most fun thing in the world, but, you got to play hurt sometimes. So welcome to the show on this February, December.
February, December, whatever.
Yeah,
it's sometime.
I'm still recovering.
It's still 2013, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And in the past 24 hours, I've had blood taken out of me twice.
Right.
I've had stuff inserted into me once. And I am, Hey, how you doing with your weight deal thing there, Mark?
Well, I'm on my birthday month.
Oh, that's bad. You were looking good, man. You were shedding those pounds.
No. I'm just taking a little holiday break. I
slipped off the...
a little holiday break, that's all.
I slipped off the, what do you call it? The wagon.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just like salt.
Oh, you're
anything salty. I just
Yeah.
have like an addiction. What we need is a doctor to help us
I have to start
out.
gaining weight. I've gained like 2 or 3 pounds, but I'm just kind of hanging out right now. I'll go back on it.
It's the holidays.
We need a guest.
Yeah.
We need a guest today who's a doctor.
We do.
And that would probably help if we had a guest who's a doctor.
Maybe we do.
Maybe we do. What do you mean?
Maybe we do. Maybe he's on the line right now.
Who, a doctor?
A doctor.
Did a
real
doctor
life
call?
doctor.
Yeah.
Doctor, are you there?
Not just the guy
A real
with the
doctor.
doctorate who spent time in an ivory tower writing about things that he doesn't know, but a real life doctor.
A real doctor. Yeah.
Where?
So,
I don't see him.
yeah, here he is, right here.
Oh, my word, it is. We have a real live
it's a
doctor, not like an honorary doctor, but a
Not a
real
fake
life
one.
physician.
Not a fake one.
Not honorary at all.
No. Hey,
Has Topo Gigio gone away?
what's that?
Has your Topo Gigio voice gone away?
What do you think, Doc? It was. When was the last time you had that particular examination?
Oh, I had the whole.
Or do you do it
plumbing
yourself?
thing done.
He just stands on a mirror and does it.
Can you examine yourself?
And you develop some temporary amnesia from the anesthesia that's given to you for the procedure for colonoscopy. So apparently I was very hungry afterwards, and I walked out before they wanted me to go, and I went to an Au Bun Pan and had my oatmeal, and I don't remember anything about it.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good.
I got to tell you a funny story about a colonoscopy real quick.
Well, I didn't have a
There's
colonoscopy.
no funny story about one.
I've had
You
those.
just had a digital exam.
Yeah.
I just had the digital check
exam.
the
Yeah,
prostate,
right.
or prostrate, as some people say in New Jersey. How's your prostrate doing? Yes, that's all I had. What happened to you?
My wife, she had ulcers.
Go to you for a second.
Go to me. Oh, okay, go to me for a second. Okay,
Full on you.
full on me.
There you go.
There we go. And she had one of the cameras go down her stomach, and that's what the whole procedure was to investigate what's going on down there. And so I got one of the those little roly-poly eyeballs that they have in like gag gifts, and I got one of those and I put them on a coat hanger, and I took it into the doctor just before her exam because she's all nervous about it, and I handed it to the doctor, and I go, Doc, can you do this? Can you give this to my wife? And tell her this is the instrument you're going to use. And he played along with it, and he pulled out the device just before her examination, and she just started bursting out laughing, and the whole nursing room started bursting out laughing.
She's a little smarter than that.
So, but it was fun though. But anyway.
Oh well, our medical stories on this. Hey, is this Friday?
Oh, that's right. It is.
Is it Friday
Very
once
much
again?
so, Friday.
Dr.
Right
Andy
here from-
Bostom, guess what?
straight from us.
You are here on,
You're
tell me
straight-
when, tell
you're-
me when, tell me
you're
when.
right there.
Jumpin' Jum'ah, Freaky
Freaky
Friday. I kill you. Hello, Dr. Bostom, our special guest today.
That's right.
Prolific writer.
That's right.
And prolific physician.
That's right.
What are you doing these days in your physician work?
All research at this point. Still working on some grants that relate to heart disease, kidney disease. Nothing. They're clinical studies, but I'm not really in the clinic right now.
I got a question for you because all my life I have, for one reason or another, with a lifeguard or whatever the thing was, I have taken CPR courses all my adult life for infants, for adults. And I find out now that CPR is you do the CPR to the Bee Gees or something. I mean, what's going on? There's no more breath component, only chest compression components. Help us understand the physiology, and does this make sense?
It's evolved on the basis of of empirical evidence that really what's needed is the chest compressions, and you do get some aeration from the chest compressions themselves. I mean, if the airway's blocked, you still have to make sure that there's nothing blocking the flow of air in the upper airway, the mouth, etc. But what's critical is to try and do some form of artificial circulation, and that'll deliver blood with oxygen to the tissue. So that's been a pretty dramatic change in the protocols. The last time I was recertified, you still had to give when you did single man CPR, you still had to give a few breaths. But the first thing, what's most important is the chest compressions.
Now you don't do the. It's strictly chest compression now on the new stuff.
That's what we're talking about.
Damon, whoever you are.
That's what we've been talking about for the past 2 minutes.
Come on, catch up with the flow. Hello, McFly.
Is this the Trento show?
The last time I had to actually, and I've had to do this on occasion, had actually Heimlich somebody once who choked on a cherry tomato in a beautiful restaurant in downtown Indianapolis. Ugh, that was horrible. He survived. No, he survived.
Man.
But I was in the gym a few years ago, and I hear boom. Some guy fell straight backwards, hit his head, and he had he just fainted. But when he fainted, instead of his knees collapsing, which would have been fine, he would have fallen that way. He fell straight back, hit his head, ran over. You can see his eyes, and he's shaking. Could not open his jaw to check his airwave. I had to scream for them to bring me a pencil. I had to use a pencil to pry open his jaw to open the airwave, and he starts, the air starts going in. very sad situation. He died, actually.
Get out.
No, he died. He hit his head so hard it caused brain damage, and he died a couple of days later.
Holy smokes. That's like some of the victims from the knockout game have been dying not from the punch, but the fall.
But what causes the jaw just to lock up like that, where you can't eat, the muscle's just tight? Yeah. On Health and Wealth Radio here on WN.
It is Health and Wealth Radio.
It is, that's right. Forget about national security. We're saving lives.
We're saving lives
TrentoVision
today, that's right.
All right, let's move on from that stuff and save... Andy, you are a very prolific writer, as we said at the introduction. Pull up some of his books. Got a couple of big books out there. Coming up with a monograph. Mono means one and graph means right. A one right. I mean, what is a monograph, Dr. Bostom?
It's a short, focused analysis, really.
So one story, one focus,
right.
and you're discovering lately, and we have a couple of ways we're going to fit this into the show today. You're discovering lately that maybe in contradiction to the historical narrative that the Muslims learned to hate Jews from the Nazis, that maybe things really occurred a little differently. Tell us about your time recently. Where were you? Up in Toronto? Is that where you were?
Yes.
What were you doing up there?
Yeah,
What the heck happened?
I was speaking about what I now have come to see as the abject denial of certainly the Jewish community, but the non-Jewish community as well. The media, the policymakers, the religious leaders, about the nature of Islamic anti-Semitism. That it is truly an indigenous ideology. It existed in its own right long before the missionaries came to the Muslim world and introduced Christian anti-Semitic motifs. Way before the protocols and the Nazi ideology penetrated to the Middle East. And that I thought the most profound example of that in recent times was an interview that, of course, leave it to memory, that memory captured, given by the current Grand Imam of Al-Azhar University, Ahmed Al-Tayeb. And Al-Azhar, your audience probably knows, but to refresh refresh the memories, Al-Azhar was founded back in 973, and it has become, in Cairo, and it has become the pinnacle of Sunni Islamic religious education. And it is really the Vatican equivalent for Sunni Islam, and therefore the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar University is the nearest equivalent to a pope for Sunni Muslims, who represent, about 1 billion Muslims.
Wait, let me explore
so
that
he's
for a
probably
moment.
giving
Hey, Andy,
hold on.
Grand Imam Al-Tayeb.
Let me explore that for a
25th.
moment. Hang on, because I got to do this in pieces. This is very, very important. I mean, we have a large Catholic audience. There's 1 billion, more than 1 billion Catholics in the world. The conservative Catholics, the conservative theological, conservative political Catholics are on our side on the jihad issue, on the Zionist issue. The liberal Catholics are off the reservation. But in Catholic doctrine, Catholic theology, the Pope indeed is God's representative on earth. There's a direct theological correlation, and therefore when he speaks, it's known as ex cathedra, from the chair. He is speaking essentially doctrine, the words of that God wants him to speak. So there's an organic process of God still communicating to the people. And if the Pope says it from the chair in one of his papal bulls or one of his pronunciations, that's doctrine. And if you're a Catholic, you have no option but to follow that. Pretty rigorous. Now, the Pope can also speak as a human being, and he has suggestions and ideas and all of that. You don't necessarily have to follow that as doctrine. How does it work at Al-Azhar if this comes, the closest to the doctrinal composition of the papacy and the Catholic Church?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's in that sense that it's strictly comparable. What you get though is sort of the idea, the Muslim idea of consensus, that this is the consensus opinion of the most authoritative clerics and scholars of Islam when it comes to matters of the Sharia of Islamic law.
Is that ijma? Is that
so
what's
that,
called?
If you're
Ijma?
talking about an imam for the Shiites, a Mahdi or something like that, it's not that kind of figure. Or in the closest that we probably got to that recently was Khomeini for the Shiites, but it is just a step below that idea in that you have this institution that again has been around for 1,000 years, interpreting and teaching Muslims what Islamic doctrine is, what mainstream Orthodox Islamic doctrine is, certainly for Sunnis. So in that sense, it is quite authoritative and very much the mainstream. And so I think what Al-Tayyab said, which I just I don't know if you guys are going to show a clip or
Yeah.
do you want me to just give you the key extract?
Do we
of what
have
he
it?
said?
This is the clip from. Let me set this up. At 17 minutes after 3 o'clock, folks. It's Friday. It's Jumpin' Jumu'ah, Freaky Friday, and our special guest coming from the Northeast, the frigid Northeast. Andy, make everyone down here in Florida very, very happy. Tell us what the temperature is right now where you are.
Oh, it was warming up. I think it was in the 40s.
Oh wow, wow. Okay, it's not
You
too
know,
bad.
we've had single digits most nights, and it started to warm up a little bit.
I try to avoid using the term single digits for a while. Will you please?
Okay.
You wish you had a single digit.
Index fingers.
But it's the 18 minutes now after 3 o'clock in South Florida. Tom Trento coming at you with Mark, with Abdullah. Imam Abdullah's here on the Jumpin' Jumu'ah Freaky Friday. Say hello, Abdullah.
Hello, everybody. Assalamu alaikum.
Hey, have you said hello to Dr. Bostom yet?
I have not said hello to Dr. Bostom. Dr. Bostom is one of my least favorite human beings on the face of this earth, so I do not talk to very much. But hate you very much, Doctor. Hate you very much.
Oh, I come on, Imam, I adore you. Tom, there's a segment at the end of the clip which is kind of extraneous. He ends off with this sentence. He says,
Well,
the
hold
third
on.
part explains why the Christians are the closest in love to the believers, while the Jews and the polytheists are the exact opposite. He rambles on after that, but the part up until then is probably
Okay.
worth showing.
You have a time on that? We can
Yeah,
hear it.
Was that the
don't have
first or the
exactly
second
what that
clip?
is, but
that's one from October 25th, correct, Andy?
oh yeah. The interview was from October 25th.
All right, what we're doing, folks, we're going to show you a video clip. No photoshopping. We didn't make this. These are not actors. This is real. It's in Cairo, Egypt, at Al-Azhar University, essentially the Vatican, if you will, for Sunni Islam. And our thesis, our big idea today, is that that the Nazis didn't teach the Muslims to hate Jews. Jew hatred is a doctrinal component of Islam, and you're going to hear coming from a doctrinal propagator and communicator coming out of Al-Azhar. These are the scholars. And to show you, ladies and gentlemen, how significant Al-Azhar is, in the constitution of Egypt under Mohammed Morsi, he said, we are an Islamic state, we follow the Sharia, and when there's a dispute or a need for clarification regarding the Sharia, we will go to where?
Al-Azhar.
Al-Azhar. So let's roll this tip.
So in essence, it acts as the Supreme Court jurisprudential body over Sharia law.
Well, they have a Supreme Court in Egypt,
But the interpretation of
it's
it.
the doctrinal Supreme Court, if you will. Yeah, it's over the Supreme Court.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
Here we go.
We got to read it. Damon, read it.
Damon.
The second part of the verse describes the Muslims' relations with the Christians. And the third part of the verse explains why the Christians are the closest and most friendly to the Muslims. This is an historical perspective which has not changed to this day.
And this was
See
recent.
how we suffer today from global Zionism and Judaism, whereas our peaceful coexistence with the Christians has withstood the test of history. Since the inception of Islam 1400 years ago, we have been suffering from the Jewish and Zionist interference in Muslim affairs. And this is a cause of great distress for the Muslims. The Quran said it, and history has proved it. You shall find the strongest among them to be the Jews and the polytheists. The second part, you shall find the closest in love to the believers to be those who say we are Christians. The third part explains why the Christians are the closest in love to the believers. Well, the Jews and the polytheists are the exact opposite.
Yeah, you can
The
cut it
Christians
there,
are
Tom.
humble.
Okay. Yeah, we're cutting it right there. So, all right, Andy, tell us who this gentleman is and what he just, what is the context and what is the meaning of what he just said?
The key verse that, well, he is the current Grand Imam of Al-Azhar University. I think as an important footnote, he succeeded Muhammad Sayyid Tantawi, who died of a heart attack in March of 2010. Tantawi had been the Grand Imam from 1996 to March of 2010. Tantawi's magnum opus, just to show you how deep-seated this is. So his predecessor, Tantawi's magnum opus, was a 700-page treatise called The Jews in the Quran and the Sunnah, the Traditions of Islam. This was, I translated a considerable portion of this for my long compendium, The Legacy of Islamic Anti-Semitism. And this was one of the most really vile compendia of all the major motifs of Quranic, Hadith, Sirah, Islamic anti-Semitism assembled together in this massive tome and explained and extolled for all time. And this was his ticket to becoming the Grand Imam. So in other words, this was Tantawi's PhD thesis back in the late 60s, and it was republished in the early 80s. And it was his ticket to becoming the Grand Imam. In other words, the analogy that would, I hope people would find startling would be if, say, the previous Pope, Pope Benedict XVI, as Cardinal Ratzinger, had written a 700-page treatise extolling for all times the worst anti-Semitic motifs from medieval Christianity, and been rewarded for that by being named Pope Benedict. That would be the analogy to what happened with Tantawi. And I just, since you've played these extracts from his successor, Al-Tayyib, let me just read you something that I had translated from what his predecessor Tantawi wrote. This is from that enormous treatise. He says, "The Jews always remain maleficent deniers, evil deniers. They should desist from their negative denial. Some Jews went way overboard in their denying hostility. So gentle persuasion can do no good with them. So use force with them and treat them in the way you see as effective in ridding them of their evil. One may go so far as to ban their religion, their persons, their wealth, and their villages." And then he went into some of the specifics in the Quran. He says the Quran describes the Jews with their own particular degenerate characteristics, i.e. killing the prophets of Allah. So that would be verses like Quran 261 and repeated at 3:112. Corrupting his words by putting them in the wrong places, consuming the people's wealth frivolously, refusal to distance themselves from the evil they do, and other ugly characteristics caused by their deep-rooted lasciviousness. Only a minority of the Jews keep their word. All Jews are not the same. The good ones become Muslims. And he cites Quran 3:113. The bad ones do not. So
That's funny.
and he would go on and give interviews where he would be asked about this treatise, and he'd say, I still believe every word of it. As a matter of fact, he said that right after a dialogue session, alleged dialogue session he had with the chief rabbi of Israel at the time, back in the late 90s.
Right.
And he said he used the meeting because you should poke a finger in the eye of your religious opponent, because he was criticized for even having the meeting. But this is the nature of the doctrine and discourse that goes on within Sunni Islam's Vatican, and now that brings you to his successor, who hinges on a critically important Quranic verse. The verse he's citing, he doesn't give you the number, he just reads it, is from the 5th surah or chapter of the Quran, the 82nd verse. And this verse, almost as a form of projection, we might call it, claims that the Jews harbor the most intense animus towards the Muslims. Now, the significance of this verse over time, and he tells you, he goes back 1,400 years. He's not just talking about, the Zionist movement, the Arab-Israeli conflict. He goes back 1,400 years. Yep. The significance of this verse was appreciated by a brilliant Muslim polymath back in the middle of the 9th century, Al-Jahiz. He was commissioned to write a treatise for the then Abbasid Caliph al-Mutawakkil, who was trying to solidify the position of traditional Islam, because there had been a period of heresy under the so-called Mutazilites. And also, he was very concerned about outside threats from powerful Christian kingdoms, the Byzantine Empire, the Armenian kingdoms, etc. But he noticed, as a wise leader, al-Mutawakkil, that for some reason the Muslims harbored much more animosity towards the Jews in the middle of the 9th century than they did towards the Christians.
Yeah, Andy, I want to read for our audience, because we have people jumping in their cars, doing their Christmas shopping on this Friday, in and out, and I got to keep them up to date as to what we're doing. It's Jumpin' Jumu'ah Freaky Friday, ladies and gentlemen, and sometimes on Jumpin' Jumu'ah Freaky Friday, we draw pictures of goofy-looking Muslims and flip things upside down and have cartoons. And sometimes we dive deeply into the doctrine of Islam as it relates to the protection of Americans, of Westerners, of Israelis worldwide. That's what we're all about today. And our special guest, Dr. Andrew Bostom. Oh, wait a minute. I hear the lovely sound. We're going to read, Andy, we're going to read the verse you're talking about. And what Dr. Bostom is doing is establishing the fact, which is not what you're going to find in the New York Times, not what you're going to find in the Chicago Tribune, not what you're going to find in the Washington Post, the fact that Islam is historically, doctrinally, initially, continually anti-Jew, Jew hatred. Read this verse, please, Abdullah.
Oh, most gladly, my friend. This is Surah 582. You will surely find the most intense of the people in animosity toward the believers to be the Jews and those who associate others with Allah. And you will find the nearest of them in affection to the believers, those who say, quote, "We are Christians." That is because among them are priests and monks, and because they are not arrogant.
All right, Andy, that's the verse you are referring to. Give us a recap on that verse, and you can cut the.
So what I was saying was that when Jahiz was commissioned by the Caliph in the middle of the 9th century, al-Mutawakkil, he was commissioned to write actually an anti-Christian tract because Mutawakkil wanted to wean the Muslims away from this idea that was expressed in the Quran to a certain extent for political reasons, because the Christian kingdoms were threatening. And what Jahiz notices as a great intellectual of his time is that indeed his ruler is right. The Muslim masses harbor much more intense animosity towards the Jews. And he goes on to cite this particular verse, Quran 582, as the primary reason why they feel that way. And then, of course, he goes into the seerah, into the hadith about Muhammad's rancorous relations with the Jews as being the secondary cause. And a Sufi contemporary of Jahiz's, again in the middle of the 9th century, noticed exactly the same thing. And you can trace this idea all the way through to Egypt in the 19th century. There was the great British Orientalist who put together what's still used as a lexicon for translating Arabic into English. Lane writes that he says, this is about 1835, he says, the Jews are held in the utmost contempt and abhorrence by the Muslims in general, and they are said to bear a more inveterate hatred than any other people to the Muslims and the Muslim religion. And then he goes on and quotes Quran 582.
Right.
So it has been used to foment hatred towards Jews, and it's also linked to where their rightful position should be in the Islamic order, that they should be abased and humiliated and treated as outcast pariah, dhimmis.
Well, not only that, Andy.
And if they get outside that relationship, then the consequences are grave indeed.
Andy, yeah, and what you're saying is absolutely true. And it's not just in the past that has happened. It is, as recently as May of 2013, and a lot of times after that, even coming from Al-Azhar University today still. This is not old news that we're talking about. This is current, up-to-date news. Like you go back to the Friday sermon with the Al-Azhar University. And I'll play the little clip that we have here.
When was this?
This was May 10th, 2013.
Very long time ago.
Mark, if I recall this clip, this is another Al-Azhar cleric. He's obviously he's not the Grand Imam, but he's an important cleric, and I've seen him attend international meetings representing Al-Azhar. He not only invokes Quran 582, he gets into this other, I would say even more dangerous theme, which is the apocalyptic hadith that's in the Hamas charter, that the Mufti of Jerusalem cited, where in order to usher in the Messianic age, and this is a shared belief amongst Sunnis and Shiites, the Jews must be annihilated.
Yes.
So if I recall this sermon, he cites that hadith as well as Quran 582.
Right. He starts out with 582, then goes into the other hadith. And I'll play it for you right now. It's quite amazing. And here, let me go ahead and play it here. So, Allah has taught that their worst enemies about those, and he said, and this is the 582 that he's referring to, you shall find the Jews, and the policy is to be the most hostile towards the believers. Thus Allah made jihad for his sake an endurance of pain and hardship. And that's the imam in the picture that you're looking at right now. Effective means to fight the people of falsehood, meaning the Jews and Christians. The confrontation with the Jews is inevitable. Our prophet does not lie. He told us that there would be a confrontation. Between the Muslims and the Jews before Day of Judgment. And that the Muslims would vanquish them. To the point that the Jews would hide behind the stones and trees, but with the stones and the trees, and Allah, let me back up, he said a little quick here, but the stones and the trees would say, O Muslim, O servant of Allah, there is a Jew behind me, come and kill him. Let me repeat that one. And this is, you hear this all over. You see this one important phrase. It says, O Muslims, O servant of Allah, there is a Jew behind me. Come and kill him. Like Andy said, this is in the Hamas charter. This is pure annihilation and genocide of Jews. And so, if you want to do the whole chicken and egg argument, it looks like, there's a lot more of this anti-Jew hatred coming a long time before Nazism even, rose its head in Europe. So, it's pretty clear, evidently clear that this anti-Semitism has been a festering, oozing sore inside Islam, to propagate Islam throughout the world.
And it's really sad that we have to belabor the point, but part of your reason for being on the show today, Andy, is not just to do this analysis so critically important, but in your speech up in Toronto, Canada, a couple of weeks ago, you indicted the Jewish leadership as to disagreeing with the doctrinal position of Islam. Let's take a minute or two on that, and I want to show Andy's cover of his new book, and then we're going to move on to some other stuff we have for you.
Okay.
What is this indictment of the Jewish community not believing what your research has found?
Yeah, I think I pointed out a striking contrast because not only with I mentioned comparing the previous Grand Imam of Al-Azhar University, Tantawi, to the previous Pope, Benedict XVI. But more recently, after this clip ran, about a month after this clip ran, the interview of Al-Tayeb that you just showed, Pope Francis, the current Pope, issued something which translates into English, the joy of the gospel. And in this 224-page document, which is really a proselytizing exhortation of Christianity being a proselytizing faith, he, however, reiterated this strong commitment to fostering relations between Catholics and Jews. He spoke of Judaism in very positive terms, claiming that Christianity had certainly been, and the church had been enriched by Judaic values. And he condemned the legacy of Christian anti-Jewish oppression, even relating it to the depredations of the Holocaust, which is exactly what his predecessor had done. So it was like 180 degrees difference, extolling the ecumenical ties on the one hand and denouncing in a very mea culpa-like way the legacy of Christian anti-Semitism. I just tried to point out to the audience that this is the polar opposite of what's going on in Islam. They are proudly and triumphantly proclaiming the worst of their anti-Semitic canon and doing it in a very calm interview. I mean, one of the things you notice about Al-Tayeb during that interview is he's not exercised. He's not gesticulating. He's calm and relaxed and just saying these things very, very matter-of-factly. And I pointed out that, where was the Anti-Defamation League? Where was B'nai B'rith? Where were more conservative Jewish advocacy organizations saying anything about this? In fact, the only person, after I spoke in Toronto, as a matter of fact, the only person of stature who even commented about what Al-Tayeb had said was Geert Wilders. He was the only person. He wrote an open letter, and he pointed out what Al-Tayeb had said, and he also praised the Pope Francis for his ecumenical statements towards Jews. And then, of course, in Wilders' fashion, had to also point out that the Pope's statement included overwrought ecumenical statements about Islam. But regardless, at least he pointed out the disparity.
Andy, it wasn't always that way. I mean, the New York Times actually used to get this right at one point. They actually, back in the 1947 and 48, they used to write a lot of articles about the terrorists, the everything. I mean, and that's what I think we're segueing into our next segment.
No. We're going to have to do another show on that.
Oh, okay.
Because Mark's been doing some research on the original New York Times, their original understanding of jihad, which was our understanding, but there's massive amounts of material and articles.
Well, I have to tell you, Tom, even as recently as the '67 war, you can see some New York Times coverage, which is very rational, and in fact, there was an enormous Islamic conference after the war, which produced another one of these tomes, which is about 1,000 pages of jihad and Jew hatred, this time from the entire global Muslim Ummah assembled in Cairo. And to the New York Times credit, when they were aware of this conference, one of their reporters wrote about how ominous it was after the '67 war, and pointing out that this, as he put it at that point, this revival of Islamic fundamentalism and jihadism was absolutely toxic. So that was 1968, not 1948.
Wow. Yeah, well, you even read the New York Times. Go back to that last one, Damon. But anyway, we can go into the next subject.
Yeah, we're here now, just dwell on this for a second. One of the articles Mark got together, June 20th, 1946, New York Times. Interesting. The Mufti, Haj Amin al-Hassuni, the Mufti of Jerusalem turns up in Egypt. He's the guy we all know who helped Hitler. The king in Egypt is going to grant him, King Farouk at that time, asylum. But the last paragraph of this article is very interesting. It seems that the United States military had found some secret documents implicating the Mufti in a plot with Hitler,
Right.
with Caesar. Probably goes back to that. And so the Mufti, who was somewhere, had to get asylum. An official who has examined the documents found by the United States military stated today, this is June 20th, 1946, that the publication of these documents at the proper time would incense the Arab world no less than the Allied world, because the Mufti, in anticipation of a Hitlerian German victory, had promised Germany full domination over the Arab countries in return for guarantees that he would be the deputy ruler of the whole Arab world. And these secret documents provide the key by which, under international law, the Mufti can be tried for treason to his own people. Fascinating article.
Right.
We got to find those documents. But on Thursday, Andy and everyone, and it's 42 minutes after 3 o'clock on Jumpin' Jum'ah Freaky Friday, we're getting into some pretty heavy doctrine and history and theory, folks. But this is the root of why we fight the counter-jihad battle. We don't just say, hey, we got nothing to do, let's go fight crazy Muslim jihadis. No, there's a whole historic, theological...
Muslims performing jihad are not crazy.
That's right.
That is what we do.
I put out on Thursday, Andy, an email that talked about international security special. We had some folks Skyped in from around the country. The question was, if you were a Muslim jihadi, would you rather live in London or Jerusalem? And I get a response by a Muslim who has been annoying me, actually trying to dialogue with me for months. He said, silly, any Muslims not doing the most important daily jihad is giving in to their own desires. They're also allowing the oppression of others, no matter what their religion is. Of course, only the ignorant makes jihad out to be something evil, though jihad is actually a benefit to all who are righteous, right? And then he goes on, he sends me another one, and says that, this is amazing, listen to this. Calling a Muslim a jihadist is like saying that a human being breathes.
Correct.
Correct.
Because jihad is breathing is to humanity as is jihad to a Muslim.
Correct.
This is a Muslim. Now, obviously, not obviously, but he would spin that and say the jihad of, trying to lose weight and all of that. But guess what I sent him, Andy?
Yeah, you'll like this, Andy.
Guess what I sent this Muslim in return? Guess how I responded to him? Here's how I responded to him. I said, aren't you glad that we know the truth? Thus, you fool no one but yourself. Man up, be a good Muslim. Embrace Islam, qua Islam. Embrace violent jihad and all. And then I sent him a quote that Syed Qutb had on jihad. And I found the quote on page 238 in The Legacy of Jihad. How about that? Your book. So I sent it to him and I said, you're screwed, buddy. Even Syed Qutb is questioning your beliefs in the jihad. Now, let me ask you, as an expert who's written, what are you, 3 or 4 books now?
3 books and working on my second monograph.
All right, 2005, The Legacy of Jihad.
There it is.
2000, The Legacy of Jihad, right there. 2008, Legacy of Islamic Anti-Semitism, From Sacred Texts to Solemn History. Then Sharia versus Freedom, The Legacy of Islamic Totalitarianism. That's out, right?
Yeah.
And now your monograph.
Can
a Muslim, here's the question to Dr. Bostom.
Well, what was a Qutb quote?
The Qutb quote, obviously, was, I'll read the end part of it. Qutb has this whole evidentiary proclamation, and it concludes with this sentence. What kind of man? This is Syed Qutb, Sunni Muslim leader, sort of the orthodox scholar of
The
Islam. one of
Thomas
them.
Jefferson, if you will, of Islam.
He concludes his information on what jihad is by saying, "What kind of man is it who, after listening to the commandment of God and the traditions of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and after reading about the events which occurred during the Islamic jihad, still thinks that Islamic jihad is a temporary injunction related to transient conditions and that is concerned only with the defense of the borders?" The rhetorical question, who can believe that anymore, whereas jihad is an offensive, not just a defensive tool? So, but the question to you, Andy, is can a good Muslim reject the doctrinal teaching of jihad as jihad and still be a good Muslim?
No, I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, what people. First of all, the jihad isn't always violence. So certainly, people can opt to promote jihad via propaganda, via persuasion, via other means. I mean, there's a whole gamut.
No. I'm talking about
means.
Qutb's quote here, where he's basically arguing for offensive jihad to kill the infidels. Can a Muslim say, "I don't like that part of Islam. I'm a good Muslim, but I don't believe we should ever go on the offensive and kill people for any reason whatsoever. I'm a Quaker Muslim."
Yeah, that there's no mainstream idea that embraces that. But it doesn't. In other words, you could be on the sidelines in a sense, raising money, etc., for alms for jihad, zakat for jihad, and still you're considered to be doing something very worthy vis-a-vis offensive jihad. Even in the United States, the Assembly of Muslim Jurists of America, which is a major mainstream body that actually trains imams in the United States and Canada. They publish their fatwas online. You could read them. And one of their fatwas dealt with this question about offensive jihad. And a Muslim wrote in and they said, well, no, not now, because the ground isn't prepared for it. But when the time comes, absolutely. And they were talking specifically about waging jihad in North America. Now, of course, there are people that'll get ahead of the curve, and we just saw a Muslim convert in Wichita attempting to God knows what, blow up an airplane on the tarmac or something like that, and various other plots that are disrupted. But even the mainstream, again, the Assembly of Muslim Jurists of America wrote in this fatwa, the guidance to a Muslim writing into them, that, oh no, we don't rule out offensive jihad in America. And Taqi Usmani, who is very prominent in financial Sharia finance and et cetera, and also wrote a monograph on jihad and other Islamic ideology. He also gave an interview back in 2008 to the Times of London where he said exactly the same thing. In other words, he was asked, well, Muslims in Britain, they can build mosques and they can worship, etc. Does that rule out offensive jihad? And he said absolutely not. I mean, otherwise, the Muslims would have stayed in Arabia.
Offensive jihad should be preserved for when we have upper hand, where we will not be all wiped off or deported.
Well, I think Andy's.
Tom, if my favorite quote comes from the man of the previous century, and many Imam Khomeini. He says, those who know nothing of Islam pretend that Islam counsels against war. Those who say this are witless.
Are witless. You're witless.
Islam says kill all the unbelievers just as they would kill you all. Does this mean that Muslims should sit back until they are devoured by the unbelievers? Islam says kill them, the non-Muslims. Put them to the sword and scatter their armies. Does this mean sitting back until non-Muslims overcome us? Islam says kill in the service of Allah those who may want to kill you. Does this mean that we should surrender to the enemy? Islam says whatever good there exists thanks to the sword and to the shadow of the sword. People cannot be made obedient except with the sword. The sword is the key to paradise, which can be opened only for holy warriors. There are hundreds of other Quranic psalms and hadiths urging Muslims to
Saudis
value
have the sword
war
on the
and to
flag.
fight.
The shadow of the sword.
And also
right,
the offensive jihad was actually when it was announced in Al-Hazar just before, the all Arab Spring thing. We picked up on that and said, "Oh my God!" Because
Gonna be a problem.
That means anybody who tries to suppress Sharia, anybody who tries to deny Sharia in other lands other than Egyptian lands, are now viable targets, according to Al-Hazar University, as legitimate targets of jihad, and you will get your 72
That's Aya
virgins.
Bandejo, exactly who got the verdict. Exact same. That was the concept.
That was the president, the new supreme leader of the Brotherhood, Muhammad. What was his name? Badi. Yeah. But we gotta shift gears right now, Dr. Andy Bostom. It's we're getting to the bewitching hour. And we're getting toward the end of the year. We have all our shows worked out for the rest of the year. This is the last time, barring any unforeseen circumstances where we need to bring you back.
No!
This is the last time we will see you this year, and who knows next year. Next year is, you never know next year. But we got a couple of things we want to run by you. We want you to stay with us for the rest of the hour. Your computer was doing a little jihad on you, fuzzing you out there
But it got
a few
back.
minutes
Yeah, I saw
ago.
that.
But it cleaned you up. And actually, if you looked in the camera instead of looking at me, look in the camera.
Yeah.
Now the people can see you. There you
next
are.
year. Next year.
Next year.
Next year you can do that.
There you go.
We found, we deal here at the United West. We deal with obviously national security, Islamic Jihad, Israel, but we also deal with this administration and this president. And we got some stuff here. We found that Congress is cutting Congress, which indicts Republicans. They're cutting military pensions. So you join the service, you go risk your life, you come out, you get a couple $100 a month, whatever it is. We're cutting that to pay for a couple of items we want to get your opinion about. Okay, you jiggy with this?
Okay.
All right. First one is what, 914,000. Why don't you explain that one? You can put the picture up now. The good doctor can't see the picture, but you can explain how we're cutting $941,000 from military pensions to pay for
Which one are we doing first?
the 914,000.
You do the website?
No.
Okay.
Okay, we need to coordinate that a little better.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know which one because there's so many of them.
He
serious.
has them. Damon had them all.
Yeah, but I have pictures. I don't have
Popular
dollar amounts next
romance.
to
Popular romance. Yeah, okay.
Well, there's a many of them
All
actually.
right, here we go.
I need 2 computers for this.
We're doing this on the
Money,
fly.
I could do this.
He's got a big white space below him. Our administration and this goofy Congress. I should run for Congress someday. What do you think about that, Boston?
Yeah.
You and me. You want to run for
All right.
Congress?
Yeah, me. Imam Abdullah should run for Congress.
I am running for lieutenant governor.
We're cutting $914,000 out of military pensions to pay for popular romance books and movies. And the Popular Romance Project, yes, this is an actual project paid for with federal dollars. The Popular Romance Project has received nearly $1 million from the National Endowment of the Humanities, NEH, since 2010 to, quote, Andy, explore the fascinating, often contradictory origins and influences of popular romance as told in novels and films and comics, advice books, songs, and internet fan fiction, close quote. Your thoughts, quickly.
That's bizarre. It's
And I love the.
it's unconscionable. You could, the only thing you could say is that they're not, at least they're not using the money for another piss Christ or something like that. It's just, but it's not the least bit funny. You have people who've served this country, who've suffered grievous injuries, people who have served and thank goodness came out intact and regardless, need their pensions.
All right, well, let's kick it up a little bit.
Well, I just
That was
want
I'm
to.
watching the clock here. But
Yeah, okay. Is the picture they have on the front of this which is the
Brokeback Mountain or
Brokeback
whatever it is.
Mountain.
Yeah.
This is the popular romance that they're trying to fund, is the advance of the LGBT community. So
Yeah, the visual, you can't see it. You will on the replay. The visual is of Brokeback Mountain, the two gay guys, whatever, that whole thing. But let's kick it up a bit, Andy. Our government is taking $17.5 million away from military pensions. And you ready for this one? In Nevada?
Oh.
And allocating $17.5 million to the brothels, the whorehouses in Nevada that have claimed tax exemptions for everything from breast implants to free passes that were deemed part of promotional costs and eligible for deductions by the IRS.
So we're in the whoring business now.
yes. Yes.
Well, we're granting tax exemptions to whorehouses in Nevada. How about that?
Right.
And taking that money away from your quick thoughts.
Next.
It's despicable.
All right, let's get serious now, though.
Let's get serious.
$50 million. We're stepping it up a little more for reproduced Google searches. $15 million to the National Technical Information Services, an agency that charges for reports that are found free of charge on Google search.
Well, that's moronic. I mean, but again, there's some sort of moral depravity going on. Are people going to argue that this is a result of the sequester, that it's automatic? I mean, it seems quite specific and quite arbitrary. One versus the other.
It's definitely it's all agenda driven.
There's too many. We're running short on time.
Yeah,
Let's
we're gonna
bang some of these out.
We're not going to get to it. We'll go to the pole dancing one. $10,000 for pole dancing through a $10,000 grant from the National Endowment of the Arts. A group of Power Up project features the linemen and electrical technicians of an Austin, Texas power company who engage in performance art in a choreographed 90-minute dance with bucket trucks, cranes, field. This is so stupid. Field trucks and a set of 20 utility poles before a live audience. So our tax money is paying for these guys to go dance on poles.
And then they've combined it with a popular romance section too. So they're kind of getting 2 for 1 on this.
Hey, you voted for Obama and you voted for dopey Congress people. This is what you get. Dr. Andy Bostom, you have been what has he been?
A plethora of knowledge and entertainment.
That's right.
How about Abdullah? What has he been?
A giant Islamophobe comparable only to you.
You have been a good friend of ours, a wonderful scholar on our show for this past 16 months, and a dear friend. You are doing the Lord's work. You keep it up, and Godspeed in the new year, and hopefully we'll see you on the other side. Okay?
Thanks. God bless you all.
You guys
Shalom.
Shalom.
Shalom. I think, folks, that's the end of our show. I think we're out on the 59, right?
But 40 seconds?
40? I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't think so,
Yeah,
Lucy.
we started on the minute.
I don't think so,
Started on
Lucy.
the hour.
We started on the hour.
We got 30 seconds.
30
Yeah,
seconds.
that's an eternity.
Hey, how
That's
about
a
that
lifetime.
3D pizza maker?
That's a lifetime. Yeah, there's so many things. Well, we have a couple more shows left this year. We can roll these things
We'll roll them out.
But on this Jumpin' Jumu'ah Freaky Friday, let's just say goodbye to our audience. They have a wonderful weekend. Be real careful. Serious point here. Shopping. There's a lot of slime bags out there. We teach on how to go through a parking lot, all that. Be alert, be aware, and park under lights and have somebody with you. God bless you. Let's say goodbye to everybody. And
Assalamu
Adios.
Shalom.
See you on Monday. I kill you. All right.
Hold on, fade the back. There we go.